Hey everyone, I want to make this video so that I can give as much information about the Bartram Trail as I can. It was a little difficult in my research before we did our through hike, but I want to make this to provide logistic information, resupply information, maps, tips, all that good stuff so that you can have a successful through hike of the Bartram Trail and not have to stress about a whole lot of research beforehand. So let's get right into it with number one. We're going to go over logistics. The Bartram Trail is 111 miles and it goes from Georgia to North Carolina. So in Georgia, the southern terminus, there is an actual rock monument in a parking lot. And it's kind of it's very close to the border of South Carolina in the northeastern area of Georgia. So it's at Russell Bridge and there's two parking lots. One is a little smaller and that's the parking lot that's on the northwest side of the bridge. And it does not really have a lot of room in it, but that's where the actual southern terminus starts. And the other parking lot is on the southern eastern side of the bridge, which is where we parked. This is a larger parking lot, and because we were leaving the car there for 8 days, I felt more comfortable leaving it in the larger parking lot. And because there's parking right there where the trail starts, it makes it really, really easy to either start there, end there, doesn't really matter. Southern terminus is the easier one to navigate. So your northern terminus actually starts at the top of Chiowa Bald. So you really have three different options for how to get there. And because none of them are actually at Chiowa Bald and you have to hike in, you can kind of pick and choose which one is the best for you. So we chose Toccoa Gap, and it's on the AT, so you'd be hiking the AT for basically 5.9 miles, and it was all up. And then you would turn around when you get to Chiowa Bald, and you'd only be hiking back 0.2 or 0.3 miles, and then you take a left onto the Bartram Trail. So that's one option. So the second option is to start at the Nantahala Outdoor Center, or the NOC for short. That's also on the AT. If you start there, you would be hiking 8.2 miles to the start. And it looked on the elevation like it would also be uphill. So either way, you're going to be hiking uphill if you do either one of those. And the third one would also be uphill. The third one is the option that I kind of have mixed thoughts on. So at Winding Stairs parking lot, this is actually an access point for the Bartram. So if you do this third option, you would either park or be dropped off at Winding Stair parking lot. You would hike up for 5 miles to Chiowa Bald and then turn around and do the exact same 5 miles back. That reason is why I don't really like that option the best. But the more I thought about it, if you left your car in that small parking lot at Winding Stair, you could technically leave food there. You don't have to carry all of it up and then back, because you literally have to go through that parking lot to continue on the trail. So those are your three access points for the northern terminus. I will say, after hiking southbound, the northbound direction does look more difficult. Absolutely does look more difficult. Now, the difference that I see is if you hike southbound, you're immediately starting uphill, no matter which direction point you start at. And then when you turn around at Chiowa Bald, you basically do have 5 miles of downhill. So you would start hard and then you would get a break. The benefit for starting northbound is that the first 8 miles are essentially flat. So you'd have a nice little warm-up period before you hit anything too hard. Then you'd get some little ups, little downs before you get to anything that's extreme. So I'm not sure which one. I guess it just depends on how in shape you are and which one makes more logistical sense for you. So on the topic of which direction to start at, there are shuttle options that you can find. We used Sherpa Al's shuttle. It was listed on the Bartram Trail website. I will list his phone number in the video description. Now, when we were getting our shuttle ride, he did say that literally the next day he was going to be handing the job off to his son, and his son is already a part of it. So I don't know if it will still be under Sherpa Al, but the phone number should stay the same. And I will say that for that 1 hour and 45-minute ride from the southern terminus at Russell Bridge to Stokoe Gap, it was $180. And I think that was just a flat rate fee. So even if we had a third person, it still would have been $180. And if it had only been one of us, it would have still been $180. So it was nice that we could split it. Yeah, I highly recommend using them. Whichever direction you start in, they will shuttle you to the end point. He mentioned shuttling a lot of people from NOC as well. So you've got several options for any of those starting points. The town of Franklin, you're going to walk right through it. So it makes resupply and getting all of those town chores done really, really easy. So we stayed at Chica and Sunset's hostel. It was $62 a night even per person. So really cheap, really convenient. They're super nice and super helpful. They picked us up in town after we got food and did our resupply, gave us a ride back to the place, showed us around. And then after we showered and did all of our stuff, there was another girl that wanted to go back into town. So we went back into town and grabbed a couple things, and they just drove us. So really, really recommend their hostel if you're doing the Bartram Trail. But there are also, you know, a few hotels in town, or motels rather, that you can stay at. They just make it really convenient because they have laundry, they have hot water, excellent water pressure in the shower. And it's basically like staying in an Airbnb, so it's just more comfortable than like a standard motel visit. There's an Ingles and a Dollar General right beside each other on the western side of town. And because we were hiking southbound, we did come in on that side of town. And a lot of food places. There's an outdoor 76. They gave us free buffs. Like, it was a really great town visit. Franklin is not quite the halfway point, but it's pretty darn close. So you could call it pretty much the halfway. I guess it depends also if you do the road walk. If you don't do the road walk, you can definitely call it the halfway point. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about are the maps. I want this to be a specific point because these maps are great and they're waterproof and tear resistant. So we took these with us. But I'm going to be very honest with y'all. Number one, water is not marked on this map, which was a little inconvenient. And not every campsite is accurate. So I do have like picture and video footage that I'm going to show as I talk about some of these. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to list on the screen all of the campsites that were listed on the map that we did not see. Now I've got my notebook right here of notes, and let me see, they're going to be listed here. So you'll see them and you can pause and take note because these were not here. Like if they were, we completely missed them. We didn't see these. At least 10 sites completely not there. I do also want to mention that we walked through some burn areas. And so the two campsites listed around mile 13 and a half and then about mile 14, those two were in burn areas. So at this point, you will see my favorite campsites listed on the screen. These are the ones that I highly recommend. It's just my personal opinion, but we really thought that these were the best. And if I was going to go back and hike Sobo or Nobo, I would be shooting for these campsites. Mile marker 1.25, this was by the Chattooga River. It was an excellent campsite. Mile marker 7.5 is also by the Chattooga River. Around mile marker 20, there were several campsites that were excellent near Martin Creek waterfall. Mile marker 27, mile marker 31 and a quarter, mile marker 43 and a quarter. This one is the one that had the picnic table. Mile marker 70.5, mile marker 94, which was Apple Tree Group Camping, mile marker 106.5, and mile marker 108. I do want to mention that mile marker 108, the campsite is listed in the little curve. If you're going southbound like we were, it looks like on the map you're going to make a sharp left and that the campsite is right there in that divot, but it's not. It's closer to where mile marker 108 is listed on the map. Another topic I want to discuss is water. So there are 0 water markers on these maps. But to be fair, you aren't really going to have a lot of issues with water on this trail. Water was pretty abundant. We didn't have any exceptionally large stretches without water. But I will say, when you leave Franklin, hiking southbound, we were dropped off at mile marker 55, which is right past where the road walk ends. And we did not see water again until mile about 47 1/4. It's not a large distance without water, but that was the first water source we saw that day. And then we also camped around mile marker 43 that night, and that was the second water we saw that day. Just know that between about mile marker 47, there's a little spur trail that says water. Between that water source at mile marker 47 and then the parking lot at mile marker 55, that's the last water source. And then when you get to mile marker 45 and start going the road walk into Franklin, there's not really water. I mean, you're following along a water, like the river, but you don't really have access to the river until you get closer to like mile 60, maybe even further than that. So do be aware of that long stretch of water. That's the only time that we noticed that water was not as abundant. For the entire rest of the trail, you shouldn't have any issues. So the next thing I want to mention are my 2 top tips for being successful on this trail. So number 1, even though these maps may not be 100% accurate, I could not imagine doing this trail without them. They give you the elevation gain. They do list out where campsites are. They have the mile markers. We used these constantly, and we used those in conjunction with the one mapped out route on all trails. Now that route was also not 100% accurate, but it allowed us to visually verify on all trails where our location was and compare it to the physical maps and what mile marker we were at. Especially when, you know, depending on the time of day, we were trying to see how many more miles we had to the campsite we were shooting for. Those 2 things were the most helpful. I'm hoping that as this trail gains more popularity, Far Out will make a route for it, a downloadable map. That would be amazing, because then, as you know, all of us who hike it can add our own waypoints, campsite verification, water sources, which would really, really be useful. The other thing I would really recommend is to be in a little bit of shape. I'm not exaggerating when I say this is the hardest hike I've ever done. Even though northbound, you get a small, like a lower elevation, steady start, as opposed to southbound, you're starting going straight up. Either way, I would still say go in at least some shape. Be doing some sort of, you know, pack walk around your neighborhood once a week at least. Anything that you can do to be in a little bit more shape. This is my last thing. This is like a little bonus, if anyone cares. If I was going back and I was hiking northbound as opposed to southbound, which I think if I was to go back out there and do the Bartram Trail, I would do that. This would be the layout that I did. I wouldn't be pushing for high mile days. I would take a total of 10 days, and honestly, the highest mile day that I have right now listed in this plan would be 15.5 miles. And that's what I would do. I hope you found this information useful. I hope if you're planning a through hike of the Bartram Trail, comment below, especially if you're going to make videos of it. I would absolutely love to follow along. And we are planning on a hike next weekend, so I can't wait. Anyway, thanks for watching, and y'all have a great day.